Carter Harrison was no stranger to hard work. His successful career at Procter & Gamble had prepared him for leadership, making him an obvious choice when the United Fund needed a new director. Harrison's hands-on approach and strong principles impressed Preston Charlton, head of the selection committee, who was eager to bring him on board. The United Fund had thrived under Bob Allen, but it was time for new leadership. Preston believed Harrison was the right person to guide the organization into its next phase. At a reception hosted by Preston, a woman warmly welcomed Harrison, acknowledging Bob Allen's legacy and expressing excitement for Harrison's arrival. Harrison responded humbly, ready to take on the new role. Preston, thrilled with his choice, introduced Harrison to several guests, including Father Mac McClanahan and Colleen O'Reilly, director of the Second Chance Women's Shelter. Harrison was initially confused about Father Mac being both a priest and married, but Charlton explained he was the Episcopal priest of St. Anne's. Charlton emphasized Father Mac's influence in the town, noting that people sought him out for advice, not just spiritual guidance. Later, Father Mac and Colleen met Harrison, who mentioned his experience at Procter & Gamble had taught him to focus on measurable results, which he believed could benefit the nonprofit sector. He complimented Colleen's leadership and suggested she lead one of his task forces, an offer she graciously accepted. Afterward, Father Mac playfully teased Colleen about her reaction to Harrison's praise. The two shared a light-hearted moment at home, with Father Mac proving he too knew how to compliment his wife. Months later, Father Mac caught up with Bob Allen over lunch. Bob admitted he missed the social aspect of work, feeling overlooked since retirement. Father Mac reassured him that his former team still valued his opinion and wisdom. Bob sighed. "You're kind, Father Mac, but I feel like the new guy wants to cut ties with the past." After one of the team called me for advice, Harrison scolded her, saying she should ask him first before coming to me. Father Mac frowned. "That doesn't sound very helpful." Bob waved it off. "Maybe it's better this way. Harrison has his own way of doing things, and asking me for advice might slow down his transition." Father Mac smiled. "You're not an old relic, Bob. You know more about the United Fund than anyone." After lunch, Father Mac couldn't shake Bob's comments and decided to check in with Preston Charlton. Preston's secretary, who attended St. Anne's, quickly connected him to Charlton. "What can I do for you, Father Mac?" Preston greeted warmly. "I hope you're not here to lecture me for missing Mass." Father Mac laughed. "No, just wanted to ask how our new head at the United Fund is doing." "He's fantastic," Preston enthused. "He's already convincing major donors to increase their contributions. We've got a winner here." Relieved, Father Mac felt his concerns fade. A week later, when he visited the United Fund office to meet Bill Simpson, he barely remembered his earlier worries. He greeted Marge Terrell, who had been with the organization for years, then sat with Bill to discuss their upcoming homeless screening project. Afterward, Bill invited Father Mac for coffee, saying there was something else on his mind. In the break room, Bill hesitated before revealing, "I'm thinking of leaving. Things have changed here, and not for the better." Father Mac lowered his voice. "What's going on?" "It's Harrison," Bill whispered. "He's a micromanager, always watching us. People are scared to make a move without his approval." Father Mac tried to be understanding. Maybe he's just tightening things up after Bob's more flexible style? Bill shook his head. "No, it's worse than that. He's a control freak. He's already driven some people away, and more are thinking about leaving. I've been here 8 years, and I don't know how much longer I can last." Father Mac sighed. "That's troubling, Bill. I didn't realize things were that bad." Bill glanced at the clock. "Break's over. I better get back before I'm in trouble." He chuckled. "No offense." Father Mac stood up with him. "Let's keep in touch, and don't make any rash decisions." Worried, Father Mac headed for the exit. Just as he was leaving, Harrison approached with a seemingly cordial greeting. "Well, Father Mac, what brings you here? A surprise inspection?" Father Mac was taken aback by the sharpness in Harrison's voice. Defensively, he replied, "No, Carter. I've been working with one of your staff on the homeless issue and needed some info from him." Harrison waved it off. "I have the latest data in my office. Come with me." Feeling he had no choice, Father Mac followed him. In the office, Harrison handed over a folder and then looked at him closely. "I hear you've been checking up on me. If you have concerns, come to me directly." Father Mac awkwardly responded, "I'm not vetting you. The United Fund is important to the community, and I wanted to see how things were going under your leadership." Harrison replied, "I appreciate that, but things are going well. If you need more information, just come to me." "Of course, Carter," Father Mac said quickly before leaving. puzzled by the frosty exchange. Later that evening, still troubled, Father Mac asked his wife, Colleen, what she thought of Harrison. "How do you like working with him?" "He's a breath of fresh air," she said. "Carter's meetings are efficient and he's getting everyone on board. Sure, he's demanding, but that's better than endless meetings that go nowhere." "Why do you ask?" she added, sensing his curiosity. Father Mac played it down. "Just hearing that Preston thinks he's doing a great job. He's even speeding up the fundraising campaign." Colleen nodded. "He's resourceful. Bob Allen was great, but he was more of a grandfather figure. I like someone who gets things done." That night, Father Mac had another nightmare, the same one that haunted him for 10 years. In Baghdad, he and his spotter, Rico, were on duty, hunting a sniper who had been targeting their battalion. Lying in position, they communicated via throat mics, but the sniper's location was elusive. Suddenly, Rico spotted something alarming. "It's a little girl. She's been shot in the leg." Rico saw her struggling to crawl to safety, but with no one helping her. Determined, he said, "I'm going in. Cover me." Mac protested. "Let me call for backup." But Rico insisted there wasn't time. He rushed to the girl, picked her up, and turned to run back. Just then, another fire shot rang out. Rico's scream rang in Mac's headphones as he saw blood pouring from Rico's thigh through the scope. Rico collapsed, shielding the girl. "Rico!" Mac yelled. "Can you move? Can you get out of there?" Rico, in pain, responded. "He shot a bone. I'm stuck, Mac." Adrenaline surged through Mac. "Hang on, I'm coming." "No, it's a trap. He's using me as bait, just like the girl," Rico warned. "Don't give him what he wants." Mac froze, torn between helping his friend and knowing Rico was right. "We'll get armor and get you out," he promised. "Sure, Mac," Rico said calmly. Then, after a pause, "Pray for me." "I don't know any prayers," Mac admitted. "I'll teach you. Repeat after me," Rico replied. With a breaking voice, Mac repeated the prayer as Rico led him through it. When they reached "Deliver us from evil," a fire shot silenced Rico. Crying and swearing, Mac searched the area but found nothing. Another shot rang out, eliminating the girl. Mac jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the nightmare as vivid as ever. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Colleen, and sat in the living room until he calmed down. The next morning, Colleen found him asleep on the couch. She hated that the war still haunted him, but didn't wake him. She quietly prepared for her day, choosing a professional outfit for her United Fund task force meeting. Before leaving, she left a note for Mac, reminding him of her schedule and mentioning she might be home late due to the off-site meeting. Harrison had booked a fancy hotel for the meeting, something Colleen found extravagant, but understood for its neutral setting and quality service. During the meeting, Harrison impressed her. He managed the group effectively, keeping discussions productive and wrapping up with clear goals. He must have been a great businessman, Colleen thought. We're lucky to have him. As the meeting ended, Harrison escorted everyone out, but asked Colleen to stay, saying he needed to discuss something privately. When she asked what it was, he gave her a room key, instructing her to wait in room 514, and left to speak with someone else. Puzzled but compliant, Colleen went to the room. She found papers and a laptop but didn't touch them, sitting on the couch instead. Time passed and she grew uneasy. Finally, Harrison entered. He nodded approvingly, removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and sat on the bed. Colleen started to sit back down, but he interrupted. "No, stay standing," he said curtly. Colleen was startled but complied. "You're an impressive woman, Colleen," Harrison said after a pause. "You're the smartest in the group, a natural leader. Everyone looks to you for guidance." Colleen blushed, trying to deflect, but he stopped her. "No, let me finish." He stood, circling her, making her increasingly uncomfortable. Then he sat back down. "You take responsibility at your agency, and I'm sure your staff depends on you. But I also know your secret," he added, locking eyes with her. "My secret?" she asked, confused. He nodded. "It's exhausting being the one in charge all the time, isn't it? Sometimes you wish someone else would take control, make the decisions for you." His words hit home, describing feelings Colleen hadn't fully acknowledged. How does he know this, she thought, realizing he was right. Harrison continued. "You want someone to take that burden off your shoulders, to tell you what to do." He stood and moved closer. "I can help with that. Trust me." Before she could react, he placed his hands on her shoulders, and the situation escalated, leaving Colleen feeling powerless. Later, Colleen glanced at Harrison. He looked perfectly composed, as though nothing had happened. Without a word, he gathered his things and left, saying, "The room is paid for. Leave whenever you want." Stunned, Colleen slowly got up and went to the bathroom. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself, trying unsuccessfully to clean her smudged makeup and messy hair. "What have I done?" she thought, overwhelmed by shame. Grabbing her purse, she cautiously left the room, avoiding eye contact with a maid in the hallway. Once inside the elevator, her mind raced. Why didn't I stop him? She kept asking herself. As the elevator doors opened, her thoughts shifted. What will I tell Mac? Driving home, Colleen was consumed by guilt. I've committed infidelity, she realized, horrified. How could I betray Mac? The dread of facing him was overwhelming. He'll know immediately, she imagined, and began to cry. But she reminded herself, it's too late now, you have to deal with it. When she got home, Mac had prepared dinner. Panic set in at the thought of sitting with him. I'm not feeling well, she said shakily. I'm going to bed early. Mac looked concerned, but accepted her excuse. After reassuring him, she slipped into the bedroom, undressed, and climbed into bed. When Mac checked on her later, she pretended to be asleep, though guilt kept her awake for hours. The next morning, Mac noticed Colleen was still asleep and decided to let her rest, thinking if she's really sick, she should stay home. He was surprised when she called around noon, saying she felt better and was heading to work. Mac smiled, thinking, she's so responsible she wouldn't miss a day. A few days later, Mac was working on a sermon when Mrs. Moore, the church secretary, informed him that Carter Harrison was there to see him. Mac was puzzled, but invited him in. Hello, Carter. What can I do for you? How's the United Fund? Mac asked. Things are fine there, Harrison replied. But I'm here about a personal matter. Personal? Mac asked, surprised. I wanted to ask about the Episcopal Church's stance on confession, Harrison said. Mac explained, we confess sins as part of our services, but private confession is rare. We don't have a formal confessional like the Catholics, but I've heard a few confessions in private. Harrison pressed, is it true that what's said in confession is confidential? Yes, Mac confirmed. It's called the seal of confession, meaning anything confessed must remain confidential, even after end of life. Good, Harrison said. I'd like to confess. All right, Mac said, curious. We don't need a special place. My office works fine. Perfect, Harrison agreed. I want to confess the sin of infidelity. Mac hesitated. But I thought you were divorced. I am, Harrison replied, then clarified. I seduced a married woman. Mac asked, do you want to tell me her name? Harrison smirked. No, but you know her. Mac, feeling uncomfortable, pressed. If you knew it was wrong, why did you do it? Just couldn't resist, Harrison said casually. Mac was struck by his lack of remorse. For someone confessing, you don't seem repentant, he remarked. Harrison, still nonchalant, replied, Oh, I know it was terrible. Mac, unconvinced, continued. Is there anything else you need to confess? No, just the one sin, Harrison said, almost mockingly. Mac handed him a prayer book and suggested he reflect on his actions and the damage caused. He advised Harrison to read the general confession and revisit the 10 Commandments, especially the 7th. Harrison nodded, took the book, and smiled. I'm glad I did this, Father Mac. I feel much better now. Harrison left, and Father Mac sat at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. He was surprised that Harrison had come to him, as he had never seen him at St. Anne's or any other church. The request for confession was unexpected, but Mac had seen enough to know that people can be unpredictable. Still, he felt disappointed in Harrison. Everyone makes mistakes, but someone in Harrison's position should act more responsibly. Mac worried about the potential fallout when Harrison's affair came to light, how it would affect not only the people involved, but also the United Fund. He hoped it wasn't with a colleague or employee's spouse, as that could bring the organization down. Why can't people think with their heads instead of their desires? Mac thought. What troubled him most was Harrison's lack of remorse. Why confess if you don't truly feel sorry? He wondered. But he couldn't share his concerns with anyone. The burden was his alone. In the following days, Colleen struggled. At work, she was distracted, and her coworkers asked if she was okay. At home, she couldn't sleep, haunted by troubling dreams. She felt distant from Mac, which scared her. He had always been everything she wanted, loving and supportive. So why did she feel the need for something different? Finally, one evening, she picked up the phone and called. Her hands trembled as she waited. When the receptionist put her through, Harrison answered smoothly, Good afternoon, Miss O'Reilly. What can I do for you? Colleen's throat tightened. She barely managed to whisper, Carter, I need to see you again. There was a pause, and then Harrison's voice slithered through the phone. Say that again, please, Miss O'Reilly. She realized he was toying with her, but she forced herself to repeat, "I need to see you again." Harrison laughed, sending a shiver down her spine. Father Mac was busy preparing for Sunday services, finalizing his sermon, answering calls, and checking on last-minute details. When Colleen told him she'd be out Saturday afternoon, Mac was relieved. Her absence gave him space to focus on the endless tasks without feeling guilty about neglecting her. That evening, Mac was shocked by Colleen's appearance. She looked pale and stiff. When she sat down too quickly and yelped in pain, he asked what was wrong, but she brushed it off, saying, "I think my period's coming early." She went to bed without eating, and Mac made a mental note to insist she see a doctor. The next morning, Colleen skipped both morning prayer and mass, which only added to Mac's worry. After church, he rushed home with her favorite fast food, relieved to find her up and feeling better. She dismissed the idea of a doctor's visit, saying it was probably just a 24-hour virus. Mac felt reassured enough to attend a vestry meeting that evening, but his concern lingered. Colleen had always been so strong, and the thought of her being unwell filled him with anxiety. What would I do without her? He wondered as he drove to the church. He thought back to when they first met. After his breakdown in the Marines, he enrolled in theological school. One night, shaken by his first nightmare, he went to the student health center where he met Colleen. She was waiting for a friend, and they struck up a conversation. Her quiet concern and his desire to overcome the horrors of war drew them together. A week later, they ran into each other again, and he asked for her number. They began dating and married during their senior year. Since then, Colleen had always been by his side. If weekends were busy for Mac, Mondays were usually calm. After lunch, Mrs. Moore informed him that Carter Harrison was there again. Surprised, as he'd almost forgotten about Harrison, Max sighed and asked her to send him in. "Hello, Carter. I hope today's visit is different from last time," Max said. Harrison's expression was serious. "Unfortunately not. I've committed infidelity again, with the same woman." Mac, incredulous, asked, "Are you serious, Carter? Why confess if you just keep repeating the same sin?" Harrison replied, "It's true, Father. But this time, she came to me, saying she needed me." Mac cut him off. "I don't want to hear excuses. Confession is about acknowledging your sins and committing to change. If you can't do that, I can't help you." "I'm only human," Harrison said with a shrug. As he left, he added, "Talking to you made me feel better, though." After Harrison left, Mac paced angrily. What is he playing at? Mac wondered if Harrison was mocking the church, or if he was genuinely conflicted, but didn't know how to express it. Either way, Mac didn't want to waste time with games when real people in his congregation needed help. What troubled him most was the potential impact on the United Fund, which he had long supported. It needs a leader with compassion, not someone playing games. He considered raising his concerns with the board, but couldn't do so without breaking the confidentiality of Harrison's confession. While Mac wrestled with his dilemma, Colleen was dealing with her own. Guilt over her affair with Harrison consumed her. She knew Mac was a devoted husband and couldn't understand how Harrison had tempted her into infidelity. One moment she cursed herself for her weakness, and the next, she longed for more. She was determined not to contact Harrison again, but the phone rang. It was Carter, his tone demanding. "Make an excuse to your husband. Meet me at the beach this weekend. Be at the Royal Sands Hotel by noon on Saturday. Don't forget to bring your underwear." "But," Colleen stammered. "You heard me. Just do it," he ordered, and hung up. That evening, when Mac got home, Colleen noticed something was bothering him. She asked, but he brushed it off. "Just a small issue with a parishioner," he said, offering no details. Deciding not to press further, Colleen made her own request. "Do you mind if I visit my sister this weekend? She asked me to come down to the beach with her." Mac asked if her sister was okay. Colleen assured him everything was fine and said they just wanted to spend some time together before the season ended. "Sure, babe," Mac replied. "Tell Megan I said hi." That night, Mac struggled to sleep, still pondering his unsettling encounter with Carter Harrison. He eventually decided to visit the United Fund the next day to gather some insight, which helped him relax enough to drift off. Colleen also couldn't sleep, haunted by thoughts of Carter. She rationalized the affair, telling herself it was just a fling, and that many people do the same. She believed it would eventually pass, and she could return to her normal life. She even blamed Mac's position in the church for putting pressure on her to be perfect. "It's not fair to expect me to be flawless," she thought, while also feeling smothered by Mac's kindness. Yet, deep down, she knew it was his caring nature that had drawn her to him in the first place. The worst part was knowing how much Mac needed her. especially after all he had endured as a war veteran. Remembering his painful past and how she had helped him recover only deepened her guilt. In the morning, Mac would find Colleen's pillow wet with tears. The next day, Mac made an appointment with Bill Simpson at the United Fund, hoping to better understand Carter's strange behavior. As he walked down the hall, he unexpectedly crossed paths with Harrison, who asked him to stop by his office afterward. This made Mac uneasy, but he agreed. After a brief discussion with Bill about the homeless issue, Mac reluctantly headed to Harrison's office. Upon entering, Mac noticed Harrison's desk was on a raised platform, forcing visitors to look up at him. Mac dismissed the obvious power play and remained silent until Harrison spoke. "I couldn't miss the chance to make one last confession," Harrison said smugly. Mac immediately warned him that he wouldn't listen unless he was sincere. Harrison, with a smirk, replied, "I haven't committed the sin yet, but I will this weekend. My lover and I are going to the beach and will indulge in all kinds of infidelity." "I figured I'd confess now." Mac stood up angrily. "I will pray for your salvation, but I can no longer be your confessor. You're mocking a sacred rite, and I won't be a part of it." He walked out as Harrison laughed behind him. Frustrated, Mac left the office, wondering if Harrison had a mental disorder. The man didn't want forgiveness. He wanted to boast. On Saturday morning, Colleen seemed eager to leave for the weekend. Mac noticed her nervousness, but attributed it to excitement about visiting her sister. Before she left, he made sure to spend some time with her, giving her a hug and saying, "Drive safe, baby. I miss you when you're not here." Colleen gave Mac a quick hug and hurried into the car. As she started the engine, Mac called out, "I love you, Colleen," but she was already pulling out of the driveway and didn't hear him. Back inside, Mac felt uneasy. The feeling grew stronger, and then a troubling thought hit him. Harrison said he was taking his mistress to the beach. He tried to dismiss it. "Lots of people go to the beach," he reassured himself. "Colleen would never cheat on me, especially not with someone like Carter Harrison." But the doubt lingered, and he couldn't focus on his sermon. He considered calling Colleen to ease his mind, but realized he couldn't ask her directly if she was with Harrison. If she denies it, will I believe her? If it's not true, she'll know I don't trust her, and that could damage our relationship. Another idea crossed his mind. He could call Megan to confirm Colleen's visit. But what if Megan was covering for her? Unsure, he hesitated again. Finally, unable to shake the suspicion, Mac made an excuse to call Megan. She answered quickly and asked, "You're not calling about Colleen, are you? She's fine, right?" Relieved she hadn't noticed anything unusual, Mac said, "No, she's fine. I just realized we haven't seen you in a while." Megan explained she was heading to New York for a week but hoped to visit soon. When she asked to speak to Colleen, Mac's heart sank. Megan's leaving for a week. Colleen had lied. Speechless, Mac barely managed to say goodbye. Colleen wasn't with her sister. Harrison's mocking confession played in his head, and Mac knew where his wife really was. The agony Mac felt was unbearable, reminiscent of the day he watched helplessly as Rico lay dying in the street. Once again, he was losing the most important person in his life. In despair, he screamed, realizing he was not only losing Colleen's love, but also her strength, the support that had helped him heal after the war. Grief gave way to anger. How could she do this to me? He wondered. I've been a good husband. What more did she want? His rage turned toward Harrison. That prick used Colleen to humiliate me. Harrison wanted him to know, but left him powerless to stop it. Why does he hate me so much? What did I do to him? But then Mac realized it wasn't just Harrison. It was Colleen, too. Did she willingly start the affair? Sick to his stomach, Mac rushed to the bathroom. Afterward, a grim clarity settled in. Colleen had betrayed him, not just this weekend, but likely before, just as Harrison had implied. Reflecting on her behavior over the past few weeks, Mac was forced to accept it. It was all true. Mac realized that Harrison's motives for his affair with Colleen went beyond simple lust. If he just wanted an affair, he wouldn't have confessed it. It seemed like Harrison was waging a personal war against him. Worse, Harrison's confessions had put Mac in a difficult position. Colleen's lie about visiting her sister didn't prove the affair, but Harrison's admissions had convinced him. Still, Mac couldn't reveal what Harrison had told him. It was bound by the seal of confession. But was it really a confession? Harrison wasn't remorseful or seeking forgiveness, so why should Mac remain silent? Yet the idea of breaking the sanctity of confession troubled him deeply. Do I have the right to decide if a confession is valid? Unsure how to proceed, Mac decided to investigate himself. He couldn't afford a private detective, but could still look into it. He searched online for beach resorts, narrowing it down by price, and called the most expensive one. When he asked if Mr. and Mrs. Carter Harrison had checked in, the operator confirmed they had. She even offered to connect him to their room, but Mac declined, knowing it was too late. He sank into his chair, defeated. A wave of shame hit him. I haven't even asked God for help, he realized. He tried to pray for guidance or comfort, but the words felt empty. The faith that had once given him strength now seemed meaningless. The only scripture he could recall was Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? This failure felt like the final blow. What kind of priest am I if even God has abandoned me? Mac thought. I've lost everything, my wife, my marriage, and now my faith. In his despair, his mind wandered back to the aftermath of Rico's end of life. After losing his friend, Mac had become distant from everyone. He obsessed over finding the enemy sniper responsible. Allied intelligence believed the sniper moved locations after each attack, but Mac suspected otherwise. Mac mapped out every location where men had been shot, searching for a pattern. Eventually, he realized the sniper had been firing from the same spot, a minaret overlooking the city, which was off-limits to Allied forces. Determined to end it, Mac devised a plan. He set up a decoy in the same position where Rico had been liquidated, using old clothes and a helmet, and placed himself in a nearby spot to fire at the minaret. As afternoon prayer began, Mac spotted the sniper's rifle barrel poking through the minaret's archway. He didn't need to see the shooter. Aiming where he knew the sniper's head would be, he fired. The Barrett rifle recoiled, and moments later, Mac saw an explosion of brick and mortar as the bullets strike. The sniper's rifle tumbled over the edge, signaling the end of his mission. Better make sure, Mac muttered, then kept firing at the minaret, emptying his clip. He reloaded and continued firing methodically, well into his third clip, until a squad mate arrived and took the rifle from him. When they later checked the mosque, the parapet was destroyed, and the sniper's body was in pieces. Though his command wasn't pleased, Mac had eliminated the threat and was sent home with an honorable discharge for PTSD, along with the Expert Rifleman Medal. Sitting now, lost in those memories, Mac felt a surge of adrenaline. I handled it then, and I can handle this now, he thought. I may not be a great husband or priest, but I know how to deal with enemies. Encouraged, he retrieved his Barrett rifle from the attic. He hadn't used it since Iraq, but after cleaning it, he left it ready in the bedroom. That Sunday at St. Anne's, parishioners noticed a shift in Father Mac. His usual warmth had turned stern as he led the congregation in confession. His sermon, focused on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, surprised many with its grim tone. Afterward, most people avoided lingering, unsettled by his demeanor. Preston Charlton, however, approached Mac. Everything all right, Father Mac? Everything's fine, Mac replied. Preston, concerned, pressed on. You don't seem like yourself. Is Colleen okay? We missed her today. She went to visit her sister, Mac said, trying to sound normal. She'll be back tomorrow. Preston nodded but was clearly unconvinced. If you ever need to talk, call me anytime. After the service, Mac intended to go home but answered the phone as he passed the reception room. A woman's hesitant voice greeted him. This is Marge Terrell from the United Fund. Can we meet this afternoon? Though he didn't want a meeting, duty took over, and they arranged to meet at 3 p.m. Later, Marge arrived looking distressed. In his office, Mac asked how he could help. She handed him a bundle of papers, explaining that troubling things were happening at the United Fund, but with Bill Allen on vacation, she didn't know where to turn. Afterward, Mac made his usual rounds at the nursing home. Returning to his office, he began reviewing Marge's documents when a text from Colleen appeared. Having a great time with Megan. Staying until Monday morning. Love you. Anger surged through him, and he barely resisted smashing his phone. He stormed out, slamming the church door, and drove to the United Fund office. There, he walked through the empty streets, making notes, before finally returning home, consumed by rage. Monday morning, Colleen got a late start after a restless night. She was already running behind for work, and her back ached from the drive. Recalling the weekend, she remembered Carter telling her to check in at the hotel as Mrs. Harrison, where a key to the penthouse awaited her. Carter sure likes to live in style, she thought, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. Everything after that was a blur. At one point, hotel management knocked on the door due to the noise, and Carter made Colleen prove she was fine, asking them to keep quiet to avoid disturbing other guests. On Sunday, when Colleen woke up, she initially panicked, thinking she was late for church, but reality set in, and she collapsed back into bed, guilt washing over her. They spent the rest of the day at the beach, where she felt self-conscious under others' stares. Later, Carter took her to a fancy dinner at the hotel, which ended with them back in the room. On Monday morning, she rushed to clean up and get dressed, while Carter, already ready, gave her a blank look before leaving. Colleen hurried to pack her things and check out, grateful that Carter had already settled the bill. She couldn't stand the judgmental looks from the staff and decided she couldn't go to work looking like this. So she stopped at a store, bought new clothes, and changed in the car. As she drove to work, guilt weighed heavily on her. Did I really cheat on my husband this weekend? She felt torn between wanting a normal life with Mac and the shame of her actions. If Mac ever found out, I couldn't bear it. She promised herself she would never see Carter again, but memories of the weekend haunted her, and she shuddered at Carter's promise to bring more men next time. What's wrong with me? She wondered. I love Mac, so why can't I control myself? Frustrated, she pushed the thoughts aside. I'll deal with it later. For now, I need to focus on work. Arriving at the women's shelter, she immersed herself in paperwork, but during lunch she realized she hadn't called Mac. She quickly dialed the church office and reached Mrs. Moore, who informed her that Mac was in a meeting and might stay at the hospital overnight. Colleen felt uneasy. Is he avoiding me? She wondered. Is he upset I didn't come home on Sunday? She tried to push aside the nagging thought that he might know about her weekend, as it was too painful to consider. Colleen got home late from work, hoping to catch Mac, but the house was dark and his car was gone. Relieved she could unpack without him seeing, she did laundry and took a long shower to shake off the dirt from her rushed hotel exit. As she dressed, she noticed a long black bag in the corner of the bedroom. Realizing it was Mac's old sniper rifle, she recoiled in shock. Why had he taken it out? She wondered, suddenly anxious, remembering his dark days after Iraq. She tried calling Mac's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. She reminded herself that he often turned off his phone at the hospital, but the unease lingered. Torn between guilt and worry, Colleen struggled to sleep. The next morning, Mac found a note from Mrs. Moore about Colleen's call, but set it aside. There would be time to deal with Colleen later. Just then, Marge Terrell knocked on his door and handed him more paperwork. As Mac reviewed it, a chill ran through him. He quickly called Preston Charlton, saying, I have another one. I'll bring it to your office before the meeting. Meanwhile, Carter Harrison was at his desk when he received an urgent call from Preston Charlton, summoning him to a meeting. Irritated, Harrison begrudgingly complied, driving to the bank and noticing Mac leaving as he arrived. He wouldn't be so smug if he knew what I did to his wife, Harrison thought with a grin. When Harrison entered Charlton's office, Charlton got straight to the point. The trustees unanimously voted to remove you as executive director of the United Fund, effective immediately. Shocked, Harrison demanded an explanation. Charlton handed him expense reports showing unauthorized personal purchases and inappropriate spending. Enraged, Harrison tore up the documents, shouting that he had increased donations and deserved better compensation. You can't fire me over small things like this, Charlton coldly replied. You don't get to decide what's acceptable. It's the sponsor's money, not yours. You used fund money for personal luxuries, like the beach resort last weekend. There was no conference. My secretary confirmed it. Defensive, Harrison argued. It's a stressful job. I'm entitled to some perks. You know how investments work. You have to spend money to make money. But it doesn't matter, Harrison added darkly. I have a contract, and if you try to fire me, I'll sue and drag this out for years. Charlton remained composed. You could do that, but we'd still win. You'd face civil and criminal charges, legal fees, and possible prison time. But to avoid damaging the United Fund's reputation, we're offering a deal. Sign a document admitting to the misuse of funds, agree to make restitution, and we'll let you resign quietly without pressing charges. Charlton held out a legal document to Harrison. This is the agreement, Carter. I suggest you sign it. It's the best offer you'll get. Harrison angrily grabbed the document, stuffing it into his jacket. I'll take it to my lawyer. He'll laugh at it, he snapped. Then something dawned on him. This isn't just about the expenses, is it? It's that priest, isn't it? I saw McClanahan leaving earlier. He broke his vows and told you about my confession, didn't he? Charlton looked confused. I don't know what you're talking about. Harrison, now gloating, continued. I can't believe it. Father Mac broke the seal of confession. He told you about my affair. I'll have him excommunicated. He'll be the laughingstock of the town. Charlton, still bewildered, said, Father Mac didn't mention any confession. Harrison sneered. I confessed I was having an affair, dropping hints about who it was with. And when Mac figured out it was his wife, he broke his vow and told you. Charlton stood up, shocked. What are you saying? Colleen would never cheat on him. Harrison grinned. You don't know Colleen like I do. Who do you think I took to the beach last weekend? Charlton paled. If that's true, you should sign this and leave town immediately. Mac was in the Marines in Iraq. Harrison scoffed. That weakling? What's he going to do, throw a Bible at me? Charlton, desperate, warned. He's one of the toughest men I know, and he loves his wife more than anything. Unfazed, Harrison stormed out. You'll hear from my lawyer. Preston, worried, tried to reach Father Mac but couldn't get through. Don't do anything stupid, Mac, he muttered to himself. Later, Colleen was working when Harrison barged into her office furious. Your husband broke his vows. He told Preston about my confession. Colleen, confused, asked, Why did you even go to confession? Harrison, smirking, replied, To put Mac in his place. I laughed at him while telling him I was committing infidelity with someone he knows. Panicked, Colleen gasped. You didn't tell him about us, did you? Harrison grinned. Of course I did. I even hinted I was taking you to the beach. I made him a betrayed man, and now I'm going to ruin him. Colleen's voice trembled. He's going to eliminate you. Harrison scoffed. I'm not afraid of him. He wasn't a chaplain, Carter, Colleen said fearfully. He was a sniper. Over 50 confirmed eliminations in Iraq. He once shot a man from 1.5 miles away. Harrison looked uncertain. You're lying, Colleen, now terrified, pleaded. He brought his sniper rifle home. You need to leave town, now. Harrison stared at her in disbelief. Why are you so worried? You don't care about me. Tears in her eyes, Colleen replied. You're right. I don't care about you. But I care about Mac. If he loses someone he loves again, it will destroy him. He doesn't deserve that. Harrison hesitated, twice trying to speak before stopping. He glanced at the people outside Colleen's office, then back at her. Finally, he made up his mind. You're crazy, he said. This is all nonsense. St. McClanahan isn't perfect, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows. With that, he bolted from her office and headed for his car. Driving back to the United Fund, Harrison's thoughts raced. He was satisfied that he had humiliated Mac, but furious that the priest had broken the seal of confession. He wanted revenge, yet a growing sense of anxiety made him scan the sidewalks, wondering if Mac was following him. When he reached his office, he found the door open, though he was sure he had closed it. Inside, the room was a disaster. His desk was shattered, papers scattered, and a large hole punctured the wall behind his desk. His secretary nervously approached. Mr. Harrison, Father Mac left a package for you. He said it was urgent. Harrison opened the package and found a large metal bullet casing. Shaking, he realized it was from a sniper rifle. Inside the package was also a torn Bible page with the words, "An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth," highlighted. Remembering what Colleen had said about Mac's sniper skills, Harrison panicked. He could be watching me from anywhere. He ducked away from the window, trembling. Hastily, he pulled out the document Charlton had given him, signed it, and left it on the floor before running to his car. Shouting to his staff, "I signed it! Tell him not to shoot!" He sped off down the highway. Meanwhile, Colleen sat in her office, still in shock. After a few minutes, she grabbed her purse and left. "I'm leaving," she told a coworker. "You'll be back?" the woman asked. "I don't think so," Colleen replied, then headed to St. Anne's Hospital, hoping to find Mac. But when she arrived, his office was empty. Mrs. Moore, alarmed by her appearance, said she hadn't seen him since the morning. "If you hear from him, tell him to call me immediately, and tell him not to do anything," Colleen shouted as she rushed out. Colleen's emotions overwhelmed her, and she broke down crying in her car. Desperate, she drove home, hoping Mac would be there. But the driveway was empty, and when she entered the house, she noticed the weapon bag from earlier was gone. Sinking onto the bed, she sobbed, "What have I done? If I've turned Mac into a butcher again, I'll never forgive myself." She sat in the dark for a long time until she heard a car pull up. Slowly, she walked to the living room and saw Mac in the doorway, a rifle slung over his shoulder. She stared at him in fear as he stood silently. Unable to bear the silence, Colleen whispered, "Did you eliminate him?" "I was going to," Mac replied, "but I decided to scare him instead. Preston called me." Harrison ran out of the United Fund like he was being chased, left a resignation and confession. "We won't have to worry about him anymore." Colleen sank to her knees in relief, but fear returned as she asked, Are you going to eliminate me? Mac quickly set his rifle aside. No, Colleen. I could never hurt you. Even after what I did? She sobbed. Carter told me he confessed everything. Mac shook his head. You know, I can't reveal confessions, but I figured it out. Your behavior, lying about your plans, the hotel, I knew you were there. Colleen bowed her head, ashamed. It's worse than just cheating. I let him do terrible things to me. I deserve to die. Why, Colleen? What did I do wrong? Mac's voice cracked with emotion. It's not your fault, she wept. Carter found a weakness in me I didn't know existed. I hate myself for it. Mac knelt beside her, speaking softly. I know about temptation, Colleen. I faced it too. She looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. Can you ever love me again? He took her hands, lifting her up. I'll always love you, Colleen. She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, but after a moment he gently pulled away. I forgive you, Mac said, his voice heavy with pain. Colleen hugged him again, but he didn't respond. Slowly she pulled back, confused. What's wrong? You said you forgive me. I do, Mac whispered, but I can't stay married to you. Colleen's face crumpled in disbelief. But you said you love me? Mac shook his head, tears in his eyes. I do love you, but it's about trust. I can't forget what you did, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Colleen collapsed, sobbing. Please, Mac, give me a chance. I'll prove I'm worthy of your love. Don't leave me. Mac stood silently, heartbroken. I wish I could, but I've lost faith in you, in us. You were my strength, but now I can't rely on that anymore. I have to learn to live without you. Colleen lay on the floor, tears flowing, her body shaking with sobs, but Mac didn't move to comfort her. He stood there, watching the woman he had once loved fall apart. The next day, Preston Charlton walked into Father Mac's office and saw him packing up papers and belongings. Preston stood there for a moment, stunned, before finally speaking. How did it go with Colleen? Mac looked up, exhaustion etched on his face. She's staying with her sister for now. She needs time to figure things out, find a place to live. Preston shook his head, sympathy clear on his face. I'm sorry, Mac. I never imagined it would end like this. Mac turned away, his voice barely audible. Neither did I. Preston watched as his friend emptied drawer after drawer, his brow furrowing. What are you doing? Why are you packing? Mac faced him, pain in his eyes. I'm leaving, Preston. Leaving St. Anne's. I'm leaving the priesthood. Preston's eyes widened in shock. Mac, you can't do that. The people need you. They need someone better than me, Mac replied stubbornly. I wasn't a good husband, and I certainly wasn't a good priest. I couldn't protect Colleen from Carter Harrison, and I didn't help the United Fund when I saw the signs. I failed. Preston stepped closer, shaking his head. You can't blame yourself for what happened. Harrison fooled us all, me more than anyone. As for Colleen, well, we all face temptation at some point. We all have to deal with it. I don't understand what happened to her, but she's not the first person to be tempted. Mac gave a sad smile. Maybe you're right, Preston. But I still feel like I should have done something. Maybe I could have stopped her from going down that path. Preston put a hand on his shoulder. Mac, listen to me. You can't hold yourself accountable for everything that goes wrong in other people's lives. You did your best with the information you had. Mac's face darkened. I almost eliminated a man this week, Preston. I threatened him, and in doing so, I blew a hole in the United Fund office. What kind of priest does that? Preston smiled faintly. Forget about the building. Considering you got Harrison to sign a confession and resignation, I'd say it was worth it. Honestly, the board wants to give you a medal for getting rid of him, not a bill for the damage. His expression grew serious. As for threatening Harrison, no one can blame you for being angry after what he did to you. Mac's eyes became distant, his voice bitter. That's the worst part, Preston. I think God has abandoned me. I've lost faith in him. When I saw what was happening to Colleen, I tried to turn to him for help, or at least comfort, but I got nothing. Where was he when I needed him most? Why didn't he send someone to save me like he did for Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah? Mac gestured to the papers on his desk. This is my sermon on Sodom and Gomorrah from last Sunday. Remember how God sent an angel to save Lot before the cities were destroyed? Where was my angel, Preston? Why didn't God send someone to save me? Preston watched his friend, unsure of what to say, until he softly asked, What did you just say, Mac? Mac blinked, as if realizing something for the first time. I said I would have liquidated Carter Harrison if Marge Terrell hadn't shown up with those expense reports out of nowhere. Preston's eyes widened. Marge Terrell just showed up. Mac nodded slowly, the realization dawning on him. Yeah, she just appeared with the documents that took Harrison down. It was almost like she was sent. For a long moment, Mac stood there, thinking about what he had just said. Then, with a deep breath, he began to stack the folders back in his desk. I guess this is where I belong, Mac said quietly, a faint flicker of hope in his voice. I grew up in a wealthy family, with money being something inherited, not earned. As a child, I didn't fully understand how everything worked, but I knew we were financially secure. Over time, as I got older, I began to understand the responsibilities and expectations that came with it. I didn't build the business, but now I'm the one running it. My great-grandfather started the company, and it's been our family's responsibility ever since. The business, DMI Industrial, has gone through several changes over the years, with different partners coming and going, but it's always been a central part of my life, shaping both my personal and professional choices. The company was originally called Melvin Dwops Bennett & Company, but after a scandal during 1 and 2, the Bennetts were pushed out. My grandfather, Robert Dwops, saved the business by investing some of his personal wealth, giving him a larger share and control. The name changed to Dwops, Melvin, and Iovine Industrial to reflect the company's growth. In the 90s, my dad shortened it to DMI Industrial to make it more memorable. Over the last 20 years, the Iovines faced challenges and sold off most of their stock, which my dad eagerly bought. Now, our family controls 78% of the company, with the Melvins holding 18% and the Iovines only 4%. Despite my wealth, I work hard like everyone else. I'm constantly balancing customer demands for lower prices with employee expectations for better pay and benefits. Unions and rising healthcare costs are tough to manage, but that's part of the job. However, this story isn't about business. It's about my life and my marriage, both of which were struggling recently. My name is Wayne. I'm 27, and while I'm well off, I wasn't happily married. My wife, Ada, who everyone calls Ai, is incredibly beautiful and charming. Maybe too much so for me. I'm just a regular guy who works hard and doesn't live a flashy lifestyle. I spend most of my time at the company's plants, making sure things run smoothly, or in the office handling financial matters. AI was the most beautiful girl in school, always dating the popular athletes. Meanwhile, I dated nice girls, and during my junior and senior years, I was in love with Maria Hess. She was nothing like Ada. Maria was petite, with pale skin and red hair, while Ada is tall, blonde, and tan. When Maria first transferred to our school, I was instantly drawn to her. She approached me to show her around, and despite a slightly awkward start, we hit it off. We walked around the school, and by the time I led her to her next class, I could tell something special was developing between us. From that moment, everything changed. After Maria sat down, I introduced her to everyone at the table. Some of the girls offered to show her around, but she politely declined, saying she had me for that. A few people were surprised because I usually only hung out with girls as friends, never in serious relationships, since I knew most high school romances wouldn't last. I attended most school dances with friends, without any pressure for more than just a good time. I typically went with girls like Louise Jefferson, Edith Bunker, and Maude Finley, who were part of my circle. The jocks and cheerleaders had their high school relationships, but the rest of us didn't take things that seriously. From the start, Maria shook things up. Near the end of lunch, Paul Ace Fraley from the jock table came over with a couple of cheerleaders to introduce himself to Maria. He clearly had his eye on her. When he told her his nickname was Ace, Maria asked if it was because he played cards, adding she thought gambling was dumb. His confidence wavered, and when she asked him if he used steroids, implying they affected his brain and ego, he was clearly embarrassed. I tried to defuse the situation by complimenting his performance in last week's football game. Ace quickly shifted gears, puffing out his chest again and inviting me to the game that weekend, before walking away with his pride intact. As Ace left, Ada, the school's princess, smiled at me for the first time, acknowledging my existence. Maria noticed this and squeezed my hand tightly, glaring at her. The table burst into stifled laughter. Maria had definitely made an impression. After lunch, we had an assembly. The principal introduced Maria as the newest student and asked her what she liked about the area. With her sharp sense of humor, she replied, "I like the Wayne," confusing the principal, who thought she meant rain. The whole room laughed, and I was left red-faced as my friends teased me. Over the next few weeks, several athletes tried and failed to get Maria's attention. She even declined an invitation to join the cheerleading squad, joking that she was too uncoordinated and didn't want to embarrass herself. This puzzled some people, especially after seeing her impressive dives at a pool party I hosted, where she had shown surprising athleticism. Maria was full of contradictions. My parents adored her, and my dad urged me not to let her slip away. Most of my guy friends said I was lucky, and while half the girls liked her, the other half didn't. If a girl showed any interest in me, Maria could be ruthless, like with Edith, Louise, and Maud, who learned that firsthand. Once Maria disliked someone, there was no redemption. Edith experienced this when she casually asked me to the Sadie Hawkins dance, unaware that Maria had already claimed me. Maria immediately responded, coldly telling Edith that she had already asked me, accusing her of trying to embarrass her. Edith was confused, as we'd always hung out with different people without it being a big deal. But from then on, Maria made sure Edith was excluded from events, with invitations often being accidentally incorrect, like the time Edith showed up to a formal dinner dressed as a clown. I felt guilty, but I was too in love with Maria to stand up to her. In our senior year, things intensified. Maria made sure we had the same schedule, even taking auto shop with me, and we spent nearly every moment together. We were accepted to the same colleges, and Maria suggested we work over the summer to rent an apartment together. My parents approved, thinking it would teach me responsibility, and my dad even gave us jobs. I was thrilled, and Maria explained that once we had the apartment, we'd no longer be pures. She said she had fallen for me the moment we met, and though it took me a bit longer, I felt the same way. Some friends thought it was because of my family's money, but Maria liked me long before she knew I was wealthy. However, none of our plans came to fruition. Just 2 weeks before graduation, Maria's family was in a car accident after her grandmother's funeral. Her father, driving under the influence, crashed, eliminating himself, his wife, and their son. Maria fought for her life for nearly a week but never regained consciousness. When she passed, it felt like part of my heart was ripped away. I spent the summer in deep depression, unable to understand how life could lift me so high only to drop me so hard. By the time I was ready to function again, it was too late to get into a dorm, so I rented an apartment for college. My first weeks were miserable. Though I had friends at the same school, I was still too depressed for them to know how to approach me. I dressed entirely in black, from my clothes to my sunglasses, and looking back, I may have inadvertently started the goth trend. It took an old friend, Ace Fraley, to pull me out of my depression. Ace wasn't doing well in college. He was struggling on the football team and in his classes, on the verge of losing his scholarship. His high school habits of hanging out with the popular crowd weren't helping him anymore. Ace and Ada had drifted into a relationship, though it wasn't going smoothly. Jack had left for the military, and Ada was too focused on her studies to join the cheerleading team, which didn't sit well with Ace. They started arguing more often. I later found out they weren't a good match, clinging to each other out of familiarity as they both adjusted to being less significant in the college environment. I was deep in my own depression when one afternoon, I overheard Ace and Ada arguing loudly. As Ace, clearly drunk, raised his hand to hit her, I intervened. "Ace, what are you doing?" I asked, reminding him that hitting anyone, especially in public, would get him kicked off the team. He mumbled an apology, gave me a drunken hug, and walked away. Ada stood there, shaken, and admitted Ace had almost hit her before. She then broke down, hugging me and crying. I didn't know how to respond, and though I tried to stay composed, I couldn't help but notice how good she smelled and felt in that moment, reminding me that I was still human, despite everything I'd been through. "Thanks, Wayne," Ada said, giving me a strange look. For a second, I thought she might have felt how close we were. She seemed unsure of what to say. "Wayne, we've known each other a long time, and I've wanted to say I'm sorry about your girlfriend. I just didn't know how to bring it up since we never really talked." "Thanks," I replied. "I've been pretty out of it. For 2 years, I know this might be the wrong time," she interrupted. "But do you remember the first day Maria came to our high school?" "I remember," I said. "It was the first time you ever noticed me." "It wasn't the first time I noticed you," she corrected. "It was just the first time I got close enough to see the kind of person you were. You handled that situation so well, letting everyone keep their pride. I wanted to talk to you afterward, but what?" I asked, intrigued. "You know, Maria," she said softly. "It wasn't just Maria," I reminded her. "You were with Jack too." "That's different," she replied. "Jack was a good guy, and as long as I was up front with him, he'd have been okay. But Maria? No way. What do you mean?" I asked, curious. From the first day Maria came to school, she made it clear to everyone that you were hers. She didn't care about popularity, cheerleading, or clubs. You were her priority. While your group of friends dated around freely, once Maria showed up, it all changed. Anyone who tried to get close to you ended up on her bad side, and once you were on her list, you stayed there. I thought back to the day Ace had tried to sit with us. Yeah, I remember how she humiliated Ace when he tried to bring her over to his table. She really knew how to cut people down, I said. Exactly, Ada nodded. Even when people thought she'd be a great cheerleader after seeing her dives at your pool, she resisted anything that could come between you two. Is that bad? I asked. Not necessarily, she replied. But maybe having the chance to experience other people would have been good for you both. Maybe, I admitted. All I know is I miss her. It feels like part of my heart is gone. Wayne, I know this sounds harsh, but you still have friends if you need to talk, she said gently. I know, I replied. It's just easier to sit in my apartment and grieve. Ada's eyes widened. Wait, you have an apartment? She asked. Yeah, I couldn't get into the dorms at the last minute. Do you realize how crowded the dorms are? She exclaimed. I'm sharing a room designed for 2 with 3 other girls. It's chaotic. I can barely study. I guess I'm lucky, I said. Wayne, you have so much life ahead of you, she said softly. If Maria loved you as much as you loved her, she'd want you to keep living. For both of you. I nodded, waved goodbye, and hurried off to my class, still thinking about everything she said. About a day after our conversation, things started to change. I was sitting on the couch in front of my fireplace, reading a chapter for class, with a bowl of popcorn and a cold beer. Even though I was only 19 and technically not old enough to drink, it was my apartment. So I made my own rules. I heard a knock on the door and answered it to find Ada standing there. She smiled and said, I was debating. Debating what? I asked, confused. I was trying to decide if you're an a-hole or just out of practice, she said, walking past me into the apartment. She explained that she'd asked some of our high school friends about me, and they all thought I was a good, normal guy, despite being rich. So I figured you're just out of practice with women, she continued. What am I out of practice at? I asked. Reading signals, she replied. For the past 2 years, you've been taken, so you missed out on that. I tried to defend myself, saying I never really learned that stuff. She smiled. Yesterday, I hinted about how lucky you are to have all this space, hoping you'd invite me to study here. She looked around the apartment, clearly impressed. But you didn't even tell me where you live. Sorry, I said. Maybe I am out of practice. No harm done, she said, looking at the fireplace and the popcorn. So, what are you doing? I held up my book, explaining I had chapters to read before class. I don't want to disturb you, she said, taking a seat in the chair. I like beer too, you know. That night was quiet. We both read in near silence, occasionally glancing at each other, but not much was said. Around 9:30, she stretched and thanked me for letting her use the space. I thought your building's curfew was 11? I asked. I had to take 3 buses to get here, she smiled. I don't want to be out late alone. I offered to drive her home, and she smiled, saying, Your friends were right. You are a nice guy. The next night, she knocked again, asking if she could get her spot back. This time, she brought another girl, Heather, who was studying pre-med and couldn't focus in her own dorm. Heather was quiet, took juice instead of beer, and joined us for another evening of studying. Ada settled into her chair, and we all worked peacefully together. The next evening, Ada came back alone. When I asked about Heather, she shrugged and said she didn't need a ride home, as she could take the bus. I insisted on driving her, though, not wanting her to be out alone in the cold. She smiled and started preparing a quick dinner, saying we couldn't live on popcorn and beer. After dinner, we settled into our usual spots on the couch. This time, though, there was more eye contact, and she kept smiling at me. I asked her about Ace, and she casually mentioned they were no longer together. I apologized, but she smiled and said, I wouldn't be here with you most nights if we were still together. I'm not that kind of girl. Later, when I was driving her home, she asked if I was going home for the weekend. When I said I hadn't decided, she hinted that if I wasn't, she'd like to go to a movie with me. I was surprised and hesitated, telling her she was like a goddess, and I couldn't understand why she'd want to go out with me. She cut me off, saying, I'm just a person. If I were that amazing, Jack wouldn't have left for the army. After everything, including losing my pureness to him, all he said was, okay then. Tears welled up in Ada's eyes as she recounted. The next day, Jack called to tell me he was leaving early for camp to get a head start. Officer training is competitive, apparently. Before he left, I was expecting some heartfelt goodbye after all our time together in high school. Instead, he just said, "Well, bye." She shook her head. "Some goddess, right?" I hugged her as she continued. And Ace was worse. When I got to school here, he just came up to me and said, "Jack's gone. I guess it's us now." He acted like he inherited me. He even told me he knew I'd slept with Jack. I guess Jack talked more to him about it than to me. Ace treated me like I was just a hand-me-down. You probably saw some of that. Then she paused and added, "Wayne, back in high school, when you thought I noticed you for the first time, if Maria hadn't claimed you, I would have done more than just notice. What I saw was a guy who kept a bad situation from getting worse. You gave Ace a way out and stopped him from getting expelled or getting into a fight. You kept everyone's dignity intact. I never forgot that, but Maria was always watching you. That's why this might not be a good idea," I said. "Wayne, I hate to say this, but she's gone. You need to keep living. She wouldn't want you to be miserable. So as a friend, let's go to a movie." And we did. It was just the beginning. Soon, Ada and I spent all our free time together. We continued studying together, often with food she cooked. After Thanksgiving break, things changed. We'd met each other's families. My parents loved Ada, especially my dad, and assumed we were more than friends. When I explained we weren't, my mom just gave me a knowing look. Ada's parents acted the same, treating me like part of the family. We spent more time together, and when we went out, we were always close. One night, when a snowstorm was forecasted, Ada still insisted on coming over to study, dismissing the storm warnings. She lit the fireplace, and we settled in with popcorn and beer. Hours later, when it was time to take her home, we realized we were snowed in. The blizzard was too intense, classes were canceled, and there was no way for me to get her back to her dorm. Ada smiled at me and said, "I guess I'll have to stay over." I felt like a cartoon wolf watching sheep. I was nervous, but Ada was perfectly calm. "It'll be fine, Wayne," she said. "Just get me a t-shirt or sweatshirt to sleep in, and I'll crash on the couch." I offered her my bed, but she insisted on the couch. We settled in and watched an old movie, The Girl Can't Help It. Ada reminded me of Jane Mansfield, blonde, curvy, with an incredible smile. As the movie went on, Ada, wearing just my sweatshirt and underwear, fell asleep on me. I gently placed a pillow under her head and covered her with a blanket. She looked beautiful, and I was tempted to kiss her, but I resisted and headed to bed. The snow outside was piling up, and I realized we might be stuck for a while. I drifted off, only to wake up later to the smell of bacon. Ada was in the kitchen, but something seemed off. When I greeted her, she didn't seem as cheerful as the night before. We sat down for breakfast, and almost at the same time, we both spoke. I asked if something was wrong, and she blurted out, "You don't like me, do you?" Surprised, I asked why she thought that. She explained that last night had been planned. She'd lied about the weather, packed a bag with clothes and makeup, and expected something more to happen. "Why didn't you kiss me?" she asked. "That was a magic moment, and you let it slip away." I stumbled to explain, saying I wasn't good at reading signals. "When I looked at you, I did want to kiss you," I admitted. "Let me guess. You felt like you were cheating on Maria?" she asked. "No, I said. "I didn't want to take advantage of you. After what you told me about Ace and Jack, I didn't want to be just another guy in the line." Ada sighed. "My luck continues," she said. "Jack wasn't great, but that was partly my fault. It was prom, and I went along with it because everyone else was. It wasn't romantic or special, it just happened," Ada continued. "Then Ace came along, and I just went along with it again. We were a couple by default, and he kept other guys away from me. We had intimacy because it was expected, not because I wanted to. But then I started spending time with this really nice guy, someone who treated me better than anyone else had outside of my parents. He never made a move, though, and I kept waiting for him to. Eventually, I decided to help things along and asked him out." Her eyes widened. "We started going out, and there were nights when I'd stay in his apartment studying. I wanted to kiss him so badly, but he never did anything. When our legs brushed on the couch, I was so turned on, but still nothing happened. I saw the storm coming and imagined being snowed in with him. But even then, after we snuggled on the couch, he still didn't make a move. So I thought he just didn't want me." I stayed silent. "Wayne, you said you don't know the signals. A girl walking around in your apartment in just a shirt and underwear wants you. If she snuggles close under a blanket, she wants you. If she gets into bed with you, she really wants you." "Oh," I muttered. "See what I mean?" She sighed. "The one guy I really want does nothing." I reached out, gently touched her face, and pulled her into a kiss. It was electric, and soon we were holding each other tightly, kissing passionately. The moment was filled with magic. Bacon fell off the table, but Ada didn't care. She led me to the living room, urging me to light the fire. As the fire glowed, she pulled off my sweatshirt, revealing her body, which was even more stunning than I imagined. She smiled and asked, "Why am I the only one under the blanket?" I quickly undressed and joined her, our bodies touching and igniting a spark between us. "Wayne, I'm on the pill," she said, then asked, "Was Maria the only person you've been with?" I hesitated. "No one," I admitted shyly. Her mood softened. "You've never done this before?" she asked gently. I shook my head, embarrassed. "That's wonderful," she reassured me. "Let me take care of everything." She guided me through what she liked, showing me how to touch her. It was magical, and soon we were wrapped up in each other. We made love, and it was incredible. Afterward, we lay together by the fire, but something seemed to be on her mind. "What's wrong, I asked. She sighed. "I just feel like I wasted my first time. This was what it should have been like. It was so beautiful." "We don't live in a perfect world," I said, and maybe it helped that one of us knew what to do. She smiled, raising her head. "You're being silly," she said. "Wayne, I came. Women don't always finish, you know." I hadn't known that, but Ada smiled and reassured me. Maybe that's why intimacy never seemed special to me before. I'd never really enjoyed it until now. Then she playfully slapped me. "You're an idiot. We could have been doing this for weeks," she teased, resting her head back on my chest. For the rest of that day, and the next, we explored each other, discovering what we liked. We tried new things, keeping what we liked and discarding the rest. We found what truly connected us. Over time, we grew even closer. Of course, life wasn't perfect. I struggled with depression over Maria, feeling guilty at times. On her end, Ada dealt with jealousy early on, but after our first Valentine's Day, when I told her I loved her, she changed. She blossomed, realizing we were meant to be, and stopped worrying about other women. From then on, we faced our challenges together, growing stronger as a couple. After that, Ada changed. She started walking with more confidence, wearing clothes she knew would catch my attention, as we were both very into each other physically. She didn't care about other men, but they certainly noticed her. She transformed from the distant beauty men assumed they had no chance with to someone everyone wanted. Even Ace, who was struggling in school, started telling people he had been with her and dumped her. I had to confront him, and though I felt bad for him, I asked him to stop spreading lies. One big challenge for us was telling our parents we were living together. We built it up in our minds, putting it off for months. But when we finally did, it turned out to be no big deal. My parents loved her, and her father even joked that he already knew. He mentioned how obvious it was that we belonged together, and he didn't mind saving money on room and board. His approval left us relieved. Fast forward 2 years, and we graduated, got married, and both began working at my family's company. Ada joined the marketing department on her own merits and kept her work life professional. Everything seemed perfect, until things began to unravel. A few weeks before Halloween, Ada started acting differently. We argued more, and her usually calm demeanor became confrontational. Our once active lovemaking life dwindled, and I found myself retreating to my den to avoid the tension. She began staying out late, and I suspected she was having an affair. The breaking point came when she came home drunk one night, wearing nothing but a long coat, missing her skirt and underwear. She showered and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep beside her and moved to another room. The next morning, I told her I wanted a divorce, accusing her of cheating. Ada didn't deny my request, but warned she would take everything since we had no prenup. My lawyer confirmed I'd need proof of infidelity to stand a chance. Despite her smirks and glares, there was sadness in her eyes, as though she was hurting too. Something felt off, like she was being controlled or manipulated. But I couldn't figure it out. Even though everyone believed Ada loved me deeply, I was left retreating into my den, dealing with the depression that came with watching my marriage fall apart.
My once perfect life was falling apart. I kept hoping Wayne would realize what I wanted. One look at me should have been enough for him to understand. But instead, we were drifting further apart, and he didn't seem to see what he was about to lose. At first, I thought withholding Zex might snap him out of it, but that only hurt me too. I wasn't successful anyway. He'd touch me and my body would respond instantly. I had to try something else, but nothing worked. Ever since that woman visited him at work, he'd been different. I even watched him in the den a few times, and what I saw shocked me. I didn't know how to deal with it. I ended up taking a day off to see an expert. She advised me to ramp up my efforts to grab his attention and gave me something expensive, though I doubted it would work. Then I ran into Ace, who had just returned to town. He was different, attentive and kind, telling me how beautiful I was and how Wayne didn't appreciate me. From there, things spiraled. The final straw came when Ace brought me home drunk. I kissed him at our door just as Wayne opened it. Ace looked terrified and ran off, while I nearly stumbled inside. Wayne stormed off to the den. We had a Halloween party planned that night with our families and friends attending, but everything was falling apart.
I settled into the old leather chair in my den without turning on the computer. I unlocked the desk drawer with the only key I had and pulled out the diary. In just a few weeks, this little book had become my most valued possession. I remembered the day a woman came to my office to give it to me. She had no appointment, but insisted my secretary Joan let her in, saying it was about Maria. Hearing Maria's name sent a chill through me, even though it was a warm day. I realized this must be Maria's sister, Laura. I felt a pang of guilt for never reaching out to her after the accident. We hadn't spoken at the funeral, each locked in our own grief. Laura walked in nervously and I met her halfway. She handed me the book and said, "You have to take this. I can't keep it anymore. She wants you to have it." I thought she might be unstable. Maybe grief had overwhelmed her. She pressed Maria's worn diary into my hands, looking almost relieved. I recognized it immediately. Maria had always written in it. The pages were damaged and the cover was partially burned. "This is Maria's diary," I said, remembering how she used to plan our future in it. Laura didn't want anything for it. "She had it with her at the end," she said, scanning the room nervously. She left quickly after that, seeming calmer once the diary was in my possession. I barely noticed her departure as I flipped through the pages, searching for memories I recognized and new insights from Maria's final days. As I read, I felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching me. The office door closed on its own, and for a moment I thought Ada was playing a trick on me like she had before. She'd once hidden in my office bathroom and surprised me, leading to an intimate encounter right there in my office. Afterward, when we stepped out, people gave us strange looks, and Joan, ever the professional, ushered us back into my office. She told me to handle my employees while advising Ada to wait until the coast was clear. Joan pointed out that Ada's hair was messy, her makeup smeared, and visible bite marks were on her neck. "You look like a vampire got a hold of you," Joan had said, noting the unmistakable signs of our encounter. Joan reminded Ada that while she was beautiful and people would notice, this was still a workplace and discretion was key. As I thought about that past incident with Ada, the atmosphere in the room seemed to shift, almost as if the room itself was angry at me. It felt ridiculous, and I realized I might just be overworked. I decided to take the rest of the afternoon off, bringing Maria's diary home with me to read. Since she had passed years ago, I didn't feel like I was invading her privacy. Maybe reading her thoughts would bring me some comfort and help me move on. Though I loved Ada deeply, a part of my heart would always belong to Maria. Normally I'd text Ada to meet me at home, but that day it didn't feel right. I got home, went to the den, and started reading. Once I began, I couldn't stop. The more I read, the stranger I felt, as though I wasn't alone in the room. The air seemed to swirl around me, and it felt as if Maria herself was present. I was exhausted after just an hour, feeling drained not just mentally, but physically. Ada knocked on the door and came in, though she'd been in the den countless times before. She looked around as if the room felt different. "Come on, let's have dinner," she said. "I missed you." But as she spoke, I felt a strange tension, almost like a cloud of hate directed at her. She seemed to feel it too. "Let's get out of here," she said. "This room feels weird. Maybe we should redecorate?" I tried to stand, but I felt too weak. Ada helped me up, suggesting I go to bed, thinking I might be coming down with something. The next day, I found myself drawn back to the diary. Reading more, I started to relive memories of my time with Maria, discovering things I hadn't known. One surprising revelation was that no teacher had told Maria to ask me to show her around school. She had made it up, just as a way to meet me. From the moment she saw me, she believed we were destined to be together. Maria's diary revealed her belief in supernatural abilities passed down in her family, especially among the women. She believed she had the gift, an ability to enchant people with a touch. While I wasn't sure if this was real or just a fantasy, I couldn't deny that being with her had always felt magical. The diary also revealed how much Maria had struggled with jealousy, even feeling threatened by Ada that first day we met. Maria had noticed Ada looking at me and had made it her mission to alienate her, seeing her as competition. She had also sensed Ace's intentions and immediately disliked him, but my stepping in had reassured her that we were meant to be together. Lastly, I discovered Maria had been far more ready for us to take the next step than I'd realized. She had even gone on the pill in preparation for our first night together, which she had planned for when we moved into our apartment. She may have died a pure, but she had laid out our future in her mind, and everything had gone according to her plan, until the accident. The strangest part of Maria's diary was learning that she never wanted to go on that final trip with her family. She had even argued with her dad, reminding him that her sister didn't have to go. He assumed she wanted to stay behind to be with me, but when Maria insisted she was still a pure, he didn't believe her. Frustrated, she even offered to have her mother take her to the doctor to prove it, but her dad shut down the discussion, saying she was going because he said so. The next day, I drove over to say goodbye. We hugged tearfully while her parents rolled their eyes. Her dad, annoyed, said, "It's not like you're never going to see each other again. We'll be back in a few days." The last memory I had of her was her face pressed against the car window as they drove off. I loved her so much. As I thought about that moment, I felt like I saw someone out of the corner of my eye. I turned, but no one was there. Then, I heard what sounded like laughter. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was losing my mind. I had spent the whole afternoon thinking about the past, and I wondered if I'd ever truly move on from Maria. Suddenly, I heard a voice, clear as day. "You aren't meant to be with that bloated hoe. She's cheating on you." I turned and saw a translucent figure near me, Maria. She hadn't aged a day, still looking like she did at 18. I panicked, knocking over my chair and falling to the floor. "I'm not a vampire," she said with a smirk. "I'm here because we still feel the same way about each other." I stammered. "What do you mean?" "My spirit hasn't been able to move on," she said. "There are things I never got to do that keep me here." Maria explained that it had taken her years to gather enough strength to manifest, fueled by the connection to her diary. She'd spent a long time haunting her sister's house, trying to get her to give me the diary. After scaring her family and spelling it out on the bathroom mirror, her sister finally delivered it. Maria continued, "I thought not saying goodbye was what kept me here, but now I see there's more. Wayne, you've made a mess. You don't belong with Ada. She's cheating on you. If she really loved you, I wouldn't be here." As her image began to flicker, she said, "I'm out of energy, but I'll be back tomorrow. Love you." Then she disappeared, leaving only a strange smell behind. Later, Ada came to get me for dinner and noticed I was burning up. She helped me to bed and brought me soup. As she lay next to me, I couldn't help but think about what Maria had said. "Ada, maybe you shouldn't be around me if I'm sick," I said. "If you've got it, I want it too," she replied. "I promised you in sickness and in health." I hadn't suspected Ada was cheating before Maria said it, but now doubt crept into my mind. Ada asked, "Are you done reading Maria's diary?" "No, there's still a lot left," I said. Ada's expression changed, and for the first time, I began to look at her differently. A few days later, Ada told me she was staying home from work, but instead she went out of town without explaining why. When I asked her about her day, she didn't exactly lie, but she didn't tell the truth either. Later, I checked her credit card receipts and found out she had flown to New Orleans, stayed for an hour or two, and then returned. It seemed like she went there to meet someone and kept it from me. My mind spiraled. Maria had been right all along. I had always wondered why someone as stunning as Ada would choose a regular guy like me. For the first few years, I kept expecting her to leave me, but she never did. We'd been married for 7 years, and now it seemed like the 7-year itch had set in. Ada, now bored and with the means to do whatever she wanted, was cheating on me. Deep down, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe she had been cheating all along, and I had been too blind to see it. At events, men constantly hit on her. She was the kind of woman who got a lot of attention. Meanwhile, I was just an average-looking guy. Maybe she had married me for an easy life. That trip out of town made me start watching her more closely, and I consulted with lawyers about filing for divorce. The lawyers told me that without solid proof of her infidelity, I'd be at a disadvantage. While she couldn't take any part of the company or my stock, she could get half of my personal assets, which was substantial. Surprisingly, Ada didn't want the divorce. She said she'd fight it, and even if I won, she'd take everything she could. My lawyer suggested an open marriage, a common arrangement for some couples these days, but that wasn't for me. I believed in being with one woman. My problem, though, was that I was torn between 2 women, one alive and one dead, and somehow the dead one seemed to have the upper hand. I retreated into my den more frequently, and Ada's actions became even more suspicious. The final straw was the night of the Halloween party when she came home drunk with Ace. I couldn't take it anymore. I left her, drunk and barely able to stand, with a look of sadness in her eyes. Maybe things had gotten so bad that even she could see it. I still wanted to talk and work things out, perhaps give her some money, and let her keep her job at the company. Deep down, I still loved Ada, but I couldn't tolerate her cheating. As I sat in the den, Maria appeared, and I immediately felt drained. I could wake up feeling full of energy, but by the end of the day, I was always exhausted to the point of feeling lifeless. "You don't have to put up with her cheating," Maria said. "She's not right for you." Maria had been getting stronger each time she appeared. This time, she ran her ghostly hands over me, sending tingles through my body. I couldn't control myself as she touched me, and before long, I had lost control and stained my boxers again. "We would be so good together," she said. "Tell me how, and I'll divorce Ada tomorrow," I said, guilt washing over me as soon as the words left my mouth. "No, Wayne," she replied, smiling. By now, Maria had become almost solid, her feet firmly on the ground. "We need her. She'll never love you like I do, and she won't give you a divorce because she's too focused on the money. But we can still win this. It has to be tonight." "Why tonight?" I asked. "Because it's Halloween, the one night when the veil between worlds is thinnest. If you bring Ada into this room and give her my diary, it will give me the power to be with you fully, without being trapped in the body of an 18-year-old. Imagine, Wayne, us together forever. I'll show you everything I've ever wanted to do to you." Fueled by anger and the confusion I always felt around Maria, I agreed to something I never would have considered otherwise. "It has to be at midnight," she said. "Trust me, you're going to love this." A few hours later, the Halloween party was in full swing. Friends, family, and business contacts mingled, enjoying themselves. Ada, as usual, looked stunning in a Supergirl costume, though she wore an odd necklace that didn't quite fit. Men followed her around the party, and she flirted with them, but only when she knew I was watching. When I wasn't looking, she seemed sad. Maybe she was just trying to provoke me, reminding me she could do whatever she wanted. I was fed up. Any doubts I had about Maria's plan vanished. 5 minutes before midnight, I moved through the crowd. "Wayne, what are you supposed to be?" my mother-in-law asked, noticing my trench coat. "A flasher?" I whipped out a samurai sword and said, "I'm Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, the Highlander." Everyone laughed, including Ted from sales, who joked about my cheesy costume. I replied, "So what? My wife likes it," glancing at Ada. She smiled at me, and I knew immediately that I was making a mistake. Still, I grabbed Ada's hand and led her through the crowd. One man even called out to her, and although she assured him I was her husband and she loved me, I was furious again. We locked ourselves in the den, and people outside made playful assumptions about what we were doing. They had no idea. Ada started to speak, but I silenced her, pushing Maria's diary into her lap. She told me she loved me, and I knew in that moment I'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. Maria appeared, and Ada's eyes widened in shock. "You lying witch!" Maria hissed. "It's too late for you now!" There was screaming and a strange glowing from Ada's necklace. Her body shook violently, as if she were having a seizure. Then a puff of green smoke filled the room, and everything went silent. "Ida?" I asked. She smiled at me, but something felt off. Suddenly, I felt stronger than I had in weeks. "Guess again," she replied with a smirk and kissed me passionately. "How soon can we get rid of these people?" she asked, eager to go to bed. "You have to call me Ada," she added. "How does she even walk with this body? It's like Jell-O on springs." I should have realized something was wrong, but Ada had always joked about her figure. She clung to me throughout the party, asking who everyone was. It felt good to have her touch, but something was different. "Maria, where is Ada?" I finally asked. Maria glared at me. "How should I know? Don't ask me about her again. Only you and I matter." "Maria, I loved Ada," I said firmly. "If she hadn't cheated, I'd still be with her. She was kind and loving, even through my struggles with grief over you. She was patient, and not many women would have been so understanding." Maria, smiling strangely, said, "I hope she's moved on, somewhere happy." "Maria," I said, "I loved you, but I loved Ada too. It was a different kind of love, more mature. Maybe it didn't burn as hot, but it was real. And for the record, I liked her body just the way it was, so please don't do anything to mess it up." I took her hand and we returned to the party. As soon as we stepped out, people smiled, and I found myself explaining who everyone was. The first awkward moment came when Ada's parents approached us. "Ada, you should be ashamed of yourself," her mother scolded, "leaving a house full of guests to do whatever you were doing in that room." "Ada, we know exactly what you were doing," her father chimed in. "From the sounds of it, you were doing a good job too." Normally, Ada would have been embarrassed, but Maria, in Ada's body, wasn't fazed. She smirked at her dad and said, "It was really good, Daddy. We'll probably be doing that a lot more." For the rest of the night, I answered questions for Maria, still in Ada's body, as we encouraged guests to leave. After the last one left around 2 in the morning, she grabbed my hand and dragged me upstairs. "I've been waiting for this," she said. She seemed to know the layout of the house, which should have raised a red flag, but I was too caught up in the moment. She quickly undressed, and standing without clothes before me, my body reacted. Despite the familiarity of Ada's body, the fact that someone else was inside of it added an odd excitement. I felt a pang of guilt, but it didn't last long. She teased, "Don't hurt me. I've never done this before," before pulling me into an intense embrace. We kissed deeply, and it felt electric. We stayed locked in that moment for what seemed like forever before finally falling into bed together. Everything about making love to her felt familiar. I'd been with Ada for 7 years, and though I tried to convince myself that the similarities were due to the shared body, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was Maria's spirit driving it all. The next morning, Maria woke up smiling. "Last night was worth waiting 7 years for. Promise we'll do this every night." "There'll be nights when we can't," I said hesitantly. "That's nonsense," she replied. "You're not afraid of a little blood, are you? And there are always other options." That confirmed it was Maria. Ada had never been into rear penetration, finding it disgusting. For a week, we didn't leave the house, spending most of our time in bed. But I knew there would be challenges ahead. Maria had died as a high schooler. She hadn't gone to college, earned Ada's degree, or worked her job. She wouldn't be able to fake Ada's career or the relationships Ada had built over the years. No matter how well she tried, she couldn't convincingly be Ada in the long run. The worst part, though, was realizing that while I had longed for Maria all these years, now that I had her back, I missed Ada. I had shared 2 brief years of youthful fun with Maria, but over 7 years, I had built a real life with Ada. After a few intense weeks with Maria, I found myself aching for my wife again. One afternoon, while daydreaming about something Ada had said, I found myself crying because I missed her so much. Maria saw me and lost it. "Why are you crying, Wayne?" she demanded. When I didn't answer, she figured it out. "You're crying over that hoe, aren't you?" she screamed. "Well, stop it. You're stuck with me now, so get over it." And that was exactly how I felt, stuck. The next day at work, I was surprised to hear my secretary tell me I had an appointment Ada had set up weeks ago. The door opened, and Ace walked in. "What are you doing here?" I snapped. "Wayne, we're old friends," he said. "After what happened with Ada, how could we ever be friends?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" he said, confused. Then it hit him. "Oh, you don't know, do you?" "No what?" I asked angrily. "That you had an affair with my wife?" "No, dumbass," he replied. "I always thought you were the smarter one. Call me when you figure it out." "Wait, Ace, what's going on?" I asked. He sighed and explained that he'd grown up since college. In high school, everyone liked me because I was dependable, while he had been arrogant, thinking he could have whatever he wanted, including Ada. He admitted that he treated her poorly in college, assuming she was his by default, but he regretted his actions. He said Ada had forgiven him, and recently she had asked for his help to make me jealous so I'd start paying attention to her again. It had all been an act. Ace then showed me pictures of his wife, Brenda, and their kids, saying how much he loved her. He assured me that nothing ever happened between him and Ada. She loved me too much to cheat on me. His words hit me hard. I had ruined my life for a fantasy. "Ace, you can have any job you want," I told him. "I'll call HR and arrange it." "Thanks, Wayne," he said. "Say hi to Ada for me." After he left, I locked the door and broke down in tears. I knew I had made a huge mistake, but I had to find a way to fix it. There had to be a way to get Ada back. I left the office and drove around in my new Mustang. The car had over 500 horsepower and lots of custom features, which always helped me clear my mind. After a while, I pulled into a park to think. It didn't take long to realize that I wanted Ada back, more than I had ever wanted Maria. Being near Maria made me feel like I was cheating on my wife. If it was the last thing I did, if it cost me everything, I'd get Ada back. I believed that whatever had happened could be undone, but I was certain Maria wasn't going to help me. When I got home much later than usual, Maria was waiting for me. "Where were you?" she asked. "We need to talk." "Maria, you can have whatever you want," I said. "You're alive again and in my wife's body. You can take all my money. I can't give you the company since it has to stay in the family, and I've realized I can't give you my heart either." She didn't scream or get upset as I expected. She just listened. "Maria, I loved you when I was young, but I've grown up. What I have with Ada is real love, and I let it slip away." "But that hoe cheated on you," she spat. "Don't ever call her that again," I said, standing up. "And she didn't cheat. She was just trying to make me see what I had. If anything, I cheated on her with you. Though, is it cheating with a ghost?" "You didn't cheat," she said. "And she wasn't really a ghost. She was a succubus. She'd haunted her sister's family for years until she gave her sister that diary to pass on to you. Once the book got to you, she used it to drain your energy and grow stronger. But how? I asked. How did you get your body back? I never lost it, she smiled. It's been me all along. I pretended to be her to see if you really wanted her or me. Now that you've had your chance with her, I hope you'll leave her in the past. But you acted so much like her, I said. That was easy, she replied. I watched her with you for years. All I had to do was act angry at everyone but you and never let you out of my sight. But what about everything else? I started. Look, Wayne, she said, I love you. I always have. We had an amazing relationship until you shut me out to be with her. I was desperate, and yeah, letting you do things like rear penetration was worth it if it meant getting you back. I'd do anything for you. She may have been the woman of your dreams, but I'm the one who's really here. No, I said. You're the woman of my dreams. And don't you forget it, she smirked. So how did you... and where is she? I asked. I checked the den about a week after this all started, she said. I saw you moving like you were humping the air, and I got furious. I thought, why is he doing that when I'd gladly let him have me anytime, anywhere? Then I saw her. Whether it was my anger or my love for you, I finally saw Maria. I also realized she was draining the life out of you. So I went to New Orleans to see a gypsy who knows about these things. She told me what Maria had become and gave me ways to protect myself. She said succubi usually just feed off their victims until they die, but powerful ones can take over the body of someone close to the victim. And despite everything, Maria loved you, Wayne. The gypsy thought Maria stayed on Earth because she had unfinished business with you. We figured that her unfinished business was having sex with the man she loved. If you two had ever slept together, I'd have been finished. So the gypsy gave me a necklace to trap Maria's spirit and a spell. It worked. Instead of Maria taking over my body, she ended up in the necklace, and I pretended to be her. You have no idea how good it felt to see you realize that you love me. I was always scared that I was second in your heart, behind her. I would have pretended to be Maria forever if it meant staying close to you. Soon we'll go back to the gypsy to help Maria's spirit move on, she added with a smile. I love you so much, I said. Please forgive me. I'll never take you for granted again. No one else will ever have even a piece of my heart. I've always loved you, but there was just that small part of my heart that, Wayne, your heart is bigger than you think, and it's going to have to stretch a little more, she said. I looked at her, confused. Can we talk about this in bed? I asked. Her face lit up and I knew everything would be fine. Okay, she agreed, but it's going to have to be gentle and loving until I get used to this. No wild stuff until my body adjusts. But I thought Maria never took over your body. Was there a time when both of you were in there? I asked. Funny you mention periods, she said, because mine is really, really late. I went to the doctor and it turns out there are two of us in here. But it's me and your baby, not me and your high school sweetheart. I took her into my arms and carried her upstairs. We made slow, passionate love and then lay in each other's arms. This is how it's supposed to be, Wayne, she said, kissing me. Wayne, we need to start thinking about names. If it's a boy, we're naming him after my grandfather. His name was Gumford, and we'll call him Gum for short. If it's a girl, I began. We're not naming her Maria, she snapped. I laughed. I was thinking of naming her after your mother. I like the name Penelope. We can call her Penny for short. Over the next 2 years, we had 2 kids, a girl and a boy, and we did use those names. Our family thrived, and we loved each other deeply. We all lived happily ever after, especially on Halloween, when we were very popular. After all, it wouldn't be Halloween without trick-or-treating and all the fun that comes with it, especially for Wayne Dwops, I Dwops, Penny Dwops, and of course, Gum Dwops.